Hello everybody and welcome to another deck interview. Today I've got a blood artist with me who is going to tell us about his favorite commander deck.
Hey everybody, it's great to be here. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about my Torwaki and Obosh deck. Originally it was something that we were discussing in my Discord about ways of doing things that were a bit more unorthodox, a bit more out there, because I was feeling a little bit too in my ways with some of my previous commander decks. A little bit too basic, a little bit too well-rounded. I wanted something that had a bit more flair to it. And someone pointed out that Torwaki and Obosh together could make huge burn damage come out of basically nowhere. And so over time, we slowly started to theorize a little bit about how to make Lightning Bolt essentially work in Commander. And this deck is the culmination of that. It is a burn deck that predicates off of spending a lot of mana on its commanders earlier on, and then using that in a way to make these burn spells that otherwise aren't really super viable in Commander because they don't have a great mana and amount of cards you're spending to damage ratio, end up actually taking over the game for you.
You want to make Lightning Bolt deal enough damage to make it worth targeting at a player.
Absolutely. Yeah. With 4 players and 40 life each starting, it's really difficult to make, Lightning Bolts and Blightnings and Chars and Shocks do enough to actually be worth casting individually unless you're drawing 40 cards and then storming off with a Vivi or some other burn outlet that's static. So I was trying to make it function without that, and I think we came pretty close.
So before we get into the details of the deck, I do have to ask some questions about the delivery of the deck. So you're saying this is your Torwaki deck. I am guessing this is Torwaki the Younger, not original Torwaki.
God knows I should have specified. Yes, this is Torwaki the Younger. I forgot that he had an older brother.
Now, to the audience, this might be a little confusing. Why wouldn't I know this? Hasn't Blood Artist sent me his deck list? Yes, he did, but it's in the form of a Google spreadsheet. It's just the cards written out in a Google sheet. Sorted with colors and sometimes just little notes written right next to them. Flame Jab has 1S do this written next to it, which I'm not sure what that means.
I suppose I have some explaining to do, don't I? Okay. So yeah, the Google spreadsheet thing. At first, my group didn't really have a specific program that we were going through to make our deck lists and share them, and I had a bunch of new players that my group was comprised of, mostly my family, and to that end, we had an issue where sometimes people were like, oh, what's good removal in red? And instead of just listing them 15 different pieces of whatever's viable removal in red or red-black or what have you, I made a big staples spreadsheet of some things that were good general purpose cards for different decks when you just needed to fill in slots that were outside of your archetype. And that was on a sheet. That was on a Google Sheet, Excel spreadsheet kind of thing. And then that kind of just blossomed into a lot of us making our decks on spreadsheets in general. And this is just kind of where I became comfortable.
This is a disease that has spread. There are multiple people building decks like this.
Yeah, this insane way of putting a deck together and displaying it is something that I have infested others with. It spreads like Phyrexian oil.
Well, I mean, the nice thing for me was, in a weird way, I got a really close look at your deck because I did actually go out of my way and ported it to Moxfield. A couple of things that I noticed on the way. Well, one thing I mostly noticed on the way, which I was also really curious about. This is a 101 card deck. Is that intentional, or is there? Did I miscount something? Are you miscounting something? What's going on there?
Oh no, I super miscounted. I realized that when I pulled this up for the interview, I was making some changes to it. God, probably a month and a half ago, and I was up a land, so it's
Uh,
down a mountain from the
okay,
version I
we're
sent you.
down a mountain. Oh man, I was so happy to see 38 lands in this thing.
I probably could go down a card instead of a land. The mana is definitely the sore spot of this deck.
I mean, admittedly, so you're doing something in this deck that I think works if you're gonna be low on lands, which is you're playing a lot of tutors. And that lets you find your reliable, like big sources of control, right? You're playing Necrodominance,
Mhm.
Necropotence. And those are nasty cards. I mean, that will definitely find your lands. That's for sure.
Absolutely. This deck was originally envisioned to be my bracket 2 deck. But my group mostly only plays bracket 3.
Hmm.
So I decided when I started having issues with a bit of resource production that, well, Torwaki, I suppose I should go through the interaction between the commanders in a moment here, but Torwaki can generate me life, and if I can exploit that in order to, shore up my issues with my resources, then we're in a much better place. So Necropotence and Necrodominance are definitely two of my favorite cards to see in my opening hand. Black Market Connections is there as well.
So before we should definitely talk about the commander, what it does, and so on, and we will. But I'm curious about a couple of things regarding your playgroup. So you say that your playgroup mostly plays bracket free, so you adjusted your deck to that. Is that where you play? Do you have like a group of people that you know, and that's who you mostly spend your time playing with?
Yeah, so my play group is mostly comprised of my family and then direct friends of my family, my cousins. My cousins and I all kind of grew up in the same household and situation, so we're
Hmm.
closer to siblings. Um, and then we, didn't fall out of contact, but we just hung out less when we started going to high school and college. We had less time.
Yeah.
Uh, and we didn't have cars, or licenses at the beginning of high school. And then we kind of came back together as a friend group as opposed to just a family group in early to mid college through Magic. And this is kind of our platform to start hanging out again. So we have a weekly Magic night, and they were all newer at the time of us starting this group, to the point where some of them had never played Magic before. This was just an excuse for us to hang out with the family. And the reason I actually set up this channel in the first place was because I had this group of like 7 or so people where only 1 or 2 of them had played Magic before. Um, and I had a bunch of lessons and things that I was teaching them over and over again. So I, teach player 3 a lesson or explain a concept to
Yeah, yeah.
player 4, and then player 5 or 6 would ask a similar question like the next week or whatever. And I was like, man, this would like maybe not be the worst idea to just do little videos on these that were like 5 minutes long. And then if someone's like, hey, uh, I want to know how to take my turns faster, can you help me out with that? I feel like I'm bogging down the game, instead of trying to recall from memory and pull from the ether the thoughts that I had about that at one point. Instead, I could be like, hey, here's this 8-minute video I made. Um, which is maybe a bit presumptuous, maybe a bit like, hey, check out how cool I am that I have this resource ready for you. But that's how the channel started. It was
I
my
think
first
that's really
video, I believe.
nice. I mean, I get what you're saying, where it's a little bit like, hey, here's a burden, watch this. Um, but but also at the same time, I fully get that feeling of like, I want to make sure it's not even just that I don't want to explain this to you, but I just want to make sure that I explain it properly to you. And I will be able to explain it more properly in the past when I spent 3 hours writing this down.
Bingo. It was a big worry of, I guess not a huge worry. It was not high stakes. My cousins weren't sitting around like a council of, you must explain this with the best argument you have. But it's when you are thinking about something for a long period of time, you always come up with a much stronger and more robust list of examples and reasons to why it should or could be this way.
Mhm.
And then you have more examples to back it up. You have more different pieces of evidence to draw from. And then trying to recall that 2 or 3 months out, or heaven forbid, a couple years out, when someone else gets added to the group or someone re-asks me to explain this concept that I did forever ago, I would not have that information on hand. So that's why the channel started.
That's really cool. That's really, really neat. All right. Tell me about Torwalkie the Younger.
Oh god, Torwalkie the Younger. So the deck is, as people have probably surmised, Torwalkie the Younger with Obosh the Prey Piercer in the companion slot. So Torwalkie the Younger is a 5-mana 3/3 who has reach and lifelink. He says, if another source you control would deal non-combat damage to a permanent or player, it deals that much +1 to that permanent or player instead, and whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, Torwalkie the Younger deals 2 damage to any target. So there's two kind of weird idiosyncrasies here with Torwalkie. First of all, he doesn't say instant or sorcery on the burn damage adding clause, even though he does say an instant or sorcery specifically for his ping clause. He shocks something every time you cast an instant or sorcery, and anything that deals non-combat damage is going to get beefier. But the non-combat damage doesn't have to be instant or sorceries to get beefier, which means a lot of people build Torwalkie as a group slug deck instead of a pinging deck, and then the pinging is just part of, the whenever I cast a removal spell, or if I end up having a lightning bolt, it's gravy. I decided instead to take it a route of going full bore into it, so almost everything in this deck is an instant or sorcery that deals direct damage, ideally to creatures or players. Things that say any target got high priority on this deck list, because I very quickly realized that anything that, even if it was like 4 mana deal 10 damage to a creature, if it couldn't go towards face, it wasn't progressing my win condition.
Well, I mean, it's not going to be 4 mana. We know that.
Yeah, it sure won't be 4 mana. It'll often be more. So Torwalkie really, really incentivizes you playing instants and sorceries that deal damage to get both benefits, but you can do either or and still make some progress off of him, or rather some profit off of him. And then the other weird little thing about him is that because he, on his ping clause, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, Torwalkie the Younger deals 2 damage to any target, he actually gets the lifelink off of that. So he is refilling your life as he is decreasing other people's life totals, which makes this, kind of a non-creature aggro deck in a way. I mean, it's definitely burn, but you're playing the life total game of, if my opponent draws 20 cards, but doesn't have the mana to support that, even if they're out grinding me, there's a possibility I can just kind of take them out before they become an issue.
And you are really aiming this at players mostly. Like, when I see this clause, I worry that you're just going to be killing my creatures nonstop. But that's not your goal. You are just trying to burn people out.
Yes, absolutely. I think in a lot of Torwalkie decks, that is probably going to hit creatures before it starts hitting players, and then you're going to have like sometimes people make big storm decks off of it, with like infect or what have you. So sometimes that becomes a thing that is focused on with these decks. Mostly, though, I, like you said, am pointing that directly towards people's faces, and I want to see how quickly I can get their life total down to below around 15 or so is my maybe I could kill this person outright threshold. So, yeah, faces for both the burn spells and for the Torwalkie triggers, unless something, hugely problematic or very small and incidental to kill comes up, like a Esper Sentinel would be a good example.
Yeah.
Casting a lot of non-creatures, so it's behoove of me to ping that thing very quickly and then start hitting the person controlling it.
Just like an easy kill here and there, but primarily going after the players.
Exactly. Never say never, so every now and then I am hitting creatures, but you are correct. Most of the time I'm going after people's faces.
Yeah. You also got a companion, Obosh, the Prey Piercer.
Yeah, Obosh the Prey Piercer. He is both my favorite part and my most loathed part of this deck. And it is a love-hate marriage between me and this card. He is a 5 mana it's a Hellion. It's horrible. A 5 mana 3/5
seems probably fine, would be my guess.
Yeah, no kidding. That thing is
it's
just an upsetting art to look at. Yeah.
Yeah, the more you look at it, the more legs there are, and
I know. And there's like eyes around the mouth, which I didn't really realize at first, but
okay. So it's a 3/5, and it deals damage. It doubles damage.
Yes, so it reads, if a source you control with an odd converted mana cost would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals double that damage to that permanent or player instead. And then the other part of it that's important is it has companion. So
Yeah.
it can be in, I believe companions go in the command zone, even in formats without commanders traditionally, if you meet the starting requirement that they impose upon the deck building. And this card starting requirement is your deck contains only cards with odd mana costs and land cards. So another thing you will notice by looking at the spreadsheet, because it makes it very
Yeah.
clear what the mana curve looks like, is that this is God's worst mana curve. It is 1, then 3, then 5, then 7, then above.
Oh, I love that we are above, by the way. That makes me very happy. I'm glad that there is just a 9 mana Searing Winds in here.
Searing Winds is amazing.
Is it? Have you ever
No.
cast this?
I have, actually.
Yeah?
Searing Winds and Sorin's Vengeance get cast a surprising amount. Remember before when I said, like, hey, 15 is the amount I'd like you to be at before I kill you out of nowhere? Sorin's Vengeance and Searing Winds are the cards I'm hoping to top deck late game to just put someone under from half health.
That's okay. Yeah, I mean, I can see it. This is the kind of card, if I see you casting this and it kills me, I'm just cheering for you. That's good magic. That's how it should be, right? None of this low cost efficient stuff. Just kill me for 9 mana.
That's why it got put in the first place. Sorin's Vengeance, specifically. My cousin was running a Yearlock deck, and that deck has a weird curve because it has a 4 mana commander that taps for net positive 2 mana. It taps for 3, but it costs 1. So you go from, if you ramp into it, let's say, you go from a turn 3 Yearlock to on turn 4, if you're still hitting your land drops, you have 7 mana. So we were looking at 7 mana cards that were like really crazy, especially burn pieces, things that were group slug for that deck. And he was like, dude, Sorin's Vengeance is a 7 mana. And I was sitting there like, I don't want to like rain on your parade, but that's a lot of mana to, be just kind of, it's okay in a group slug deck. Life is a resource that you're pressuring in that. But I don't want to tell you no, but it's kind of probably not great. And then the first time I played against that deck, he murdered me with a Sorin's Vengeance. And I was like, okay, as my ode to you, in the one deck I can make this card work, I am going to play it.
That's good. That's great. I love that.
A lot of weight.
So Obosh is pretty expensive, right? Because you need to pay 3 mana to first put it into your hand, and then you also have to cast it. So it's
yes,
actually like
absolutely.
Kind of like an 8 mana creature, sort of. Which is actually slightly upsetting, I have to say. I think for Obosh, they should have changed it to like 2 mana Companion Zone, maybe 4 mana.
God, I wish I would have taken anything below 3, because the one major issue this deck has is the mana, and sometimes the card draw. But the card draw is in a pretty decent okay spot. But the mana, I mean, this is a hungry for mana deck. Obosh, like you said, it takes 8 total to get into play, and you can pay it in installments of a 3 and a 5, so it's not quite as clunky as having a straight up 8 mana commander, but it is still very clunky. And then Torwaki himself is 5 whole mana.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of text, but you certainly pay for it. So together, the two of these are 13 mana, and that's not including the fact that, like you said, we're playing Sorin's Vengeance and Searing Wind. Right, we have a large mana curve. There's a couple things in here for 5 mana. Now, most of this is more around the 1 and 3 mana. I was gonna say range, but they just are 1 and 3 mana.
Yeah.
There are some things in here that cost more. Brash Taunter is very powerful in this deck, for the interaction that I'll explain in a second here. But the mana in this deck, if you don't get it under you, if you're not seeing 1 or 2 pieces of ramp in your starting hand, that can become an issue, and that's when the deck feels more clunky. But it's also the reason why I'm enjoying it, because so many of my decks make mana or make cards or both in the command zone, and this is supposed to be getting away from that.
Oh, I've actually, I'm very much on your side with that. Like, when a couple of years ago, I was really on the trip of, if I make my commander kind of like the value engine of the deck, then I don't have to worry about it anymore, and then the rest of the deck can just kind of do whatever. But I've started to really feel like that just makes it so the deck is very lacking in identity, and it always feels like my commander is not contributing anything interesting that I wouldn't just be able to do anyways. Like I can find mana in cards in my deck. Like that's fine. That's manageable. I can just play a land every turn. Oftentimes that's actually pretty good by itself. And I would rather have a commander that actually does something neat, something cool. So I'm fully on your side with that. That's something that I've really been moving away from. And I think it's interesting to see that that's also a step that you have taken here.
Absolutely, 100% agreed. For it also leads to you playing commanders that are more popular, right? Because
Yeah.
if you're going, I want to play a treasures deck, Jolene the Plunder Queen is out there and she's making damage happen with treasures, and she's in a weird color identity for treasures. She adds green into the mix. Which outside of old Gnawbone, I'm not sure of a lot of green support that is there for treasures, but there's green support for damage, stuff that will draw you cards for having bigger creatures and stuff like that. So it's a more unique deck. But if you are looking for a treasures deck that then produces you more resources, I mean, you're going to be looking at Prosper, because that's card draw and treasures and payoff for drawing cards, or sorry, impulse drawing cards in the command zone, and they're inherently more popular because people don't want to be having non-games. So, is there card draw in the command zone for this archetype? Tight, I'll pick it up.
It's also, if you want, the moment you pick up something like Prosper, like the rest of your deck, I mean, you're just kind of picking the cards that are good with it, that are always good with it. You're just kind of taking this package that already exists, and there's not as much space for expression, I always worry.
Absolutely. One of the reasons I wanted to pivot at least a couple of decks into the more experimental and weird territory is because of the fact that, like you said, I didn't feel like I was expressing myself as much. Now, granted, part of my role in my group was as the tutor for a long time. So being someone who had very standardized, basically dummies that you beat on decks. This is a very straight up and down treasures deck. This is a very straight up and down tokens deck. This is a very straight up and down +1/+1 counters deck. This is your training dummy to fight, because then in the future, person learning this game, when you see another tokens deck or another +1/+1 counters deck or what have you, you know generally what to expect because you've played against the one that is the archetypal version of it. But after a while, that becomes boring, and it also feels like you are kind of just playing what you see on EDH Rec, even if you found it in a place that wasn't EDH Rec, which ended up being the case for my Prosper deck.
It also gets a little frustrating, doesn't it? Because like, you can do better. You know you can do better, but you're not doing it.
Yep.
And like, of course, I am fully in favor of being pro-social, right? Saying, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and make some decisions that are maybe not like 100% what I want to do, but they're like 90% I want to do, but they're better for the people around me. But sometimes you gotta look out for yourself as well, right? I've been in a similar situation pretty often where I tend to teach people a lot of Commander. Like usually not like the very beginning, but rather people often come to me for like deck building advice, IRL, not online. Like I do like a deck building workshop IRL. What I've kind of like found myself with is that sometimes I have people who are just like, hey, can I like I want to play the game? And like, sure. Do you have a deck? And they're like, no, I don't have one. And I'm like, God damn it. I would like to borrow you, like lend you one, but if I give you mine, they are weird. Like you're gonna have a hard time. Like I have a mono white landfall deck. It doesn't make any sense. You're not gonna be able to make it work unless you already know what it's supposed to do. And explaining it is just a little bit much for a new player. So I found it to be just kind of tricky to not have those like kind of like basic like as you said, those archetypical decks. So what I did for our like LGS is I just put together some like really simple basic decks that people can borrow like over there. Which I did like with kind of like the piles of cards they had lying around. But yeah, it can be a little bit tricky, like to kind of just kind of get trapped into in these support structures, I suppose, right? Like you want to help people, and that means sometimes you have to like push yourself into the back a little bit. But also, man, I want to play Magic too, you know? I want to have a fun time here as well. So
Yeah, first of all, it's really sick that you have an IRL deck building like class you put on. That rules.
it's way too long. It's just, it takes like 5 hours.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, no, like what I do is I like literally I have this like basically this class I give where it's just like, okay, here's all of the theory you need to know, right? Like you understand how magic works. I will now explain to you how to build a proper commander deck. And then afterwards I take the time that we sit down and we just build a deck together. And that just takes a while. Right. But I just kind of like, yeah, I don't know. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but it's just something I've been doing recently, and it's been a whole journey putting that thing together.
That is so cool, though. It establishes a sort of community. A lot of times you can go to an LGS and feel as if, even if you've been there a couple of times, well, this is just the place to go to play Magic. This isn't really like my people, right? This isn't really like my group. This is the
Yeah.
community around me, in less of like a capital C community sense. This is insert city here. I almost said the place I live. Insert cities here, place to play Magic, rather than, oh, you know what, I've built up a sense of capital C community. These are my people. These are the people I look forward to seeing there, and oh, I've got history with this person. And I think that's a really cool way of establishing that. It's like volunteer work for a Magic group.
Going into like a new magic space, I find can be a little bit tricky because there's oftentimes these really well-established groups already. So, for example, what we have here is we have this like magic club at our university. And if you go there, you will often have people arriving in groups of 4 and just sit down in their group of 4 and play. And then if you arrive by yourself, well, I mean, what's you gonna do? You know, like they're already playing. Like, how are you gonna get in there? And that can be really difficult. That's just something that I always find like it's worth to like kind of like help people get past this initial hurdle, because Commander and Magic as a whole are such great avenues towards socialization and just kind of like being part of a group. I mean, you said it yourself, right? Like you and your family, you kind of like grew apart a little bit, but then you found each other again by just having something simple to do. And that's really like what Magic often is for me as well. It's just like, I want to hang out with my friends, but it is kind of difficult to just say, hey, come over, hang out. I don't know what we're going to do. So I say, hey, come over, we're going to play some Magic. And that's easy. That works.
And that's the promise of the premise. And I'm using that term wrong. That's a filmmaking term. Someone in the comments is going to get mad at me for saying that. But but they're nerds. That's fine. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, it is hard to put together plans and just say, we'll figure it out. Because the person then feels as if, well, you didn't maybe put as much effort into thinking this through, or maybe this is going to fall through. But it doesn't have to stick with those established plans. I mean, heck, this interview, this conversation, right? The original premise is talking about a very specific deck, but, you know, we're talking about philosophy of why we play Magic and who we play with and what it means to have a Magic community.
Yeah, but to me, honestly, this may sound a little weird. So, like, people always say that we just kind of go on tangents, right? And like, that's true. But to me, this is all part of it. Like, your decks are really like kind of the reflective of your attitude towards Magic, and your attitude towards Magic is often very reflective of your attitude towards socialization and also of your environment. Where do you play? How do you play? And so on. From my experience, the kinds of people that play primarily online tend to build very different decks from the people that primarily play in person. So, for example, your deck right here, this may sound kind of weird, but your deck tries to kill people.
Bold statements only, but yeah.
Yeah. No, like, again, like, follow along. Give me a sec.
No, so, I get it. It's just,
your deck,
yes, it does, in fact.
Your deck tries to kill people. And that, I think, is actually a very positive thing, a very good thing. It is actually a very social thing because it is respecting other people's time. Something that you will see a lot of from people that are playing primarily in online spaces is that they will construct decks that are not necessarily like as aware of the experience of the other players. If I were to play against you with this deck right here, I assume I would be dead pretty quickly. But you know what's great about being dead? We can just play again, right? Mm-hmm. You're not going to try to lock me out. You're not going to try to make a game take an excessively long amount of time. You're perfectly happy to just put an end to it. And that's something that I think is actually very valuable, and is something that's kind of like reflective of playing it a lot in person.
Yeah, absolutely. This deck really, really wants to go from game 1 to game 2 to game 3 in one night. Or, alternatively, if it doesn't kill you very quickly, I mean, you'll notice that there's not a lot of creatures in this. The deck can't really defend itself super well from aggravation outside of Torwaki the Younger's lifelink, which means that it either kills very quickly or it tends to die. Not all the time, and I've still got a above 25% win rate with it somehow.
Or are you tracking that? Are you like aware of that in detail?
No, not in detail, not in statistics.
Okay.
Mostly just vibes based. But
Yeah.
I do bring home the W with this a decent amount of the time. Now, how much of that is because good deck construction and good play versus how much of that is, yeah, very easy for you to say that, Blood Artist. You put two commanders into play that do nothing on their own, and then you cast Soren's Vengeance and hit someone for 25, and they die out of nowhere, and they don't know why it just happened. Win rates versus quality of deck construction is sometimes a soft science, but that's how it happens.
But that is like actually a real thing though in Commander, right? Like we're sort of representing threat. I assume like a reason why this deck performs well is because you are very explosive, sort of out of nowhere. You can just, you put your things down, there's not much going on, you've taken 20 damage already just from somebody smacking you with their mana dorks, and the next turn, they're dead.
There are some decks that people talk about winning in the hand as opposed to winning on the board, right? If you make a bunch of tokens, a bunch of 1/1s, and then you have to wait a rotation, and then you stick a Craterhoof Behemoth, right? That deck won on the board. There's a certain amount of telegraph to it, is what I should say.
Yes.
That deck won on the board. People saw it coming. And then on the other hand, you have decks like Spellslingers, Storm, this Burn deck, for instance, where you assemble the win, you assemble lethal for one or all players in your hand, and then when it comes time to actually present that, it's more like springing a trap. Okay, are people tapped out? Do people have blue mana up? Do people have the possibility of having been sandbagging it to Fairy's Protection right now? No, people are tapped out. No, they don't have that many cards in hand. There was a huge counterspell war, and every resource that could have been used was probably used. Cool. Time to now just inform the table that I have obtained the W. And that gets associated sometimes with like people being a little bit salty in some circles, because especially with newer players, it's tough to know where you went wrong and then improve. But at the same time, if you are paying 13 mana for both of your commanders, sometimes that's a necessary evil to actually be able to win a game. And this definitely leans into that.
It is definitely tricky though, right? Like talking about the newer players again, they will definitely not understand what they did wrong.
Mm-hmm.
They will see you have played two creatures and you've done nothing with them, and then they're suddenly dead and they'll be like, oh wait, that came out of nowhere. But I mean, honestly, if I see you put those two on the board, I'm keeping removal in hand. I'm worried, I'm scared. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the actual cards in the deck. Now, there is a very significant portion of it that we can probably move past pretty quickly because it deals damage.
Yes, a lot of this is deals damage. One of the fun things about putting things together in a spreadsheet is that when I color code each of the individual cells, I can give the different colors meanings. And this like light pink color I went with here, I don't know if you're going to put a graphic up on the screen of this.
Oh, we can put it up on the screen. We will put the spreadsheet up on the screen.
This monstrosity. All of the light pink, Prisoner's Dilemma, Lightning Bolt, Shard Volley, etc. That is all stuff that deals damage. And then the other colors have different meanings that I'm pretty sure most people can intuit.
Yeah.
I suppose before I go through some of the individual cards and why they're good, I should explain the interaction trademark between Torwaki and Obosh.
Yeah, go ahead.
Torwaki and Obosh make math very fun with burn spells. And I think I'll use Lightning Bolt as an example here. Because the entire deck is odd converted mana, burn, instants, and sorceries, all of the effects of Obosh and Torwaki both apply to mostly everything. Obosh lets me double the damage that they would deal. Torwaki lets me increase their damage by 1, and then Torwaki also does his own individual ping for 2 damage. So how this ends up working is, let's say I have Lightning Bolt and I have an opponent at some amount of life. I cast Lightning Bolt. Okay, we have a few triggers and a few replacements that happen here. Unfortunately, the way damage works, well, for us, fortunately for my opponent, the way damage multipliers and adders work is that because damage is not an object, the person who controls the thing being affected by the damage, or the person taking the damage, is the one who orders how they are applied. I do not. So they are ordered, I usually assume, in the way that is least beneficial to me. So I cast Lightning Bolt. Torwaki trigger goes on the stack. The Torwaki trigger will deal 2 to the person's face, which is doubled by Obosh because Torwaki is a source I control with an odd converted mana cost, dealing damage to a permanent or player. So they take 4 to the face, which is lifelink. I gain 4. Then the Lightning Bolt is going to deal 3, which is doubled by Obosh, and then added 1 on top of by Torwaki. It deals 7. It would deal more damage if I added 1 and then multiplied it by 2. It would be 8, but again, assuming it's ordered in the way that is least profitable because my opponent gets to decide that. So, in total, I've spent 1 mana to then deal 11 damage.
That's kind of crazy.
That's
a huge amount of damage. 1 mana for 11. Whew.
It is a lot, and it is why I can get away with playing things like Blightning in a form. I don't even think Modern plays Blightning anymore. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I can get away with playing Blightning.
I don't think people play Blightning in Modern.
I don't think so either.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Blightning. So it finds a home here.
It doesn't have a Modern Horizon symbol on it. I don't think you can play that in Modern.
That's a topic we could do another hour-long discussion about Modern Horizon sets. But yeah, so that's the major interaction that the crux of this deck is built around, which is good with something like Lightning Bolt, and which is devastating with something like Searing Wind, when you deal 10 damage to someone at instant speed, which, when the equation is double it and then add 5 to it, is 25 damage out of nowhere.
I have to say, like you're saying that like Searing Wind is crazy, right? Because it's doubled and then you deal 5 more. But I have to say that it really feels like the low cost spells is what I would like intuitively like go towards. Because I would assume that I'm not getting down Obosh. This card is so expensive. But that is something that happens regularly. That is genuinely part of the plan. Obosh will be on the board.
Yes. Obosh being on the board is imperative. Torwaki is good, do not get me wrong. But Obosh is what puts this deck over the top and into a winning position. And to that end, some people listening to this are going to very quickly identify, well, I'll just exile Obosh. So that is a difficulty to overcome. How do I defend Obosh? If Torwaki gets smoked 18 trillion times, that is unfortunate. But if Obosh gets smoked once, we are in trouble. So I suppose those cards are something that I should go over because they are not burn spells. This deck gets better the more deflecting swats we get, especially the more affordable ones. So deflecting swat, we have redirect lightning. Unfortunately, we can't play all of these because some of these are 2 mana, but the things that allow me to change targets of spells or abilities not only are almost all instants or are all instants because of the way they have to function. So they trigger Torwaki, which then gives me Obosh, which then gives me life. But also in addition to that, they stop exile clauses, right? Someone can Swords to Plowshares my Obosh, and then, well, sorry, actually your own commander is getting Swords to Plowshared, or what have you. The more of these we get, the better this deck becomes, and I would like to see more of them in the future, especially affordable ones. Redirect Lightning, I was very, very excited about. Being Universes Beyond.
Yeah, it's just very unfortunate that a lot of these are usually 2 or 4 mana, right? That's the tricky part. Like Return to Fable would be amazing in this deck, but
well, I know, that's the one I was thinking about.
Yeah, Return to Fable would be so good. Because you always have a trigger. You always have an ability. Like you have a trigger and a
I
spell you can
know.
copy. Oh.
Return the Favor would be amazing in this deck. You can copy your own. You can copy your own stuff, right? Or is it just stuff your
Yeah, you
opponents
can copy
control?
anything. That card is crazy.
Return Soren's Vengeance and did someone for a bajillion. I would kill for Return the Favor. But despite that, restrictions exist. And one of the things that was kind of fun about putting this deck together was the fact that Obosh imposes a very weird restriction. Which makes it clunky, but it also forces me to adapt and, play things that are like Mithril Coat. Mithril Coat is also at instant speed because it has flash, protects the Tor or the Obosh or Torwaki, depending on what I need it to protect at that moment.
Yeah.
But it's no deflecting swat, right? It doesn't have the same synergies in this deck. And that might come out when we get our, next option in the Redirect Lightning deflecting swat family. So we have a stash of things that keep Obosh alive or bring them back. Phyrexian Reclamation, for instance, returns him over and over and over again until someone actually has an exile clause for him. And Reanimate can do it on the turn that I am attempting to win. Okay, Obosh is dead, but this is a 1-mana Obosh that I can then Soren's Vengeance or Searing Wind or whatever on top of.
I was so curious about the Phyrexian Reclamation because the deck really doesn't play a lot of creatures. So I was curious, why is this in here? But it's for Obosh. That's neat. That's cool. I like seeing that.
Also, because counting mana on the win turn is super important, sometimes it's best to, if Torwaki dies, instead of paying his, commander tax if it gets higher, Phyrexian Reclamation him back on the previous player's end step, and then, cast him on my turn for 5.
Looking at this deck, right? You say this is a bracket-free deck.
Yeah.
But I would be, just in my local bracket-free environment, this varies a lot, right? Like I think, generally speaking, where you are, your locality makes a huge difference as to like what the different brackets mean. But I feel like this deck might be a little slow because, and maybe I'm misunderstanding something, but it doesn't really do anything until turn 3, does it?
Correct. This, before when I was talking about the fact that this had a higher than 25% win rate in my playgroup, despite it being as jank as it is, that was mostly an artifact of people not really understanding how to play around this at first, because this was so unique. Like our discussion before, for the longest time, I was, playing as your tutor, as your teacher, very straightforward decks. And then when I started pivoting into this, people were very confused. And, like you said, putting down 2 creatures on my board, and then I would inform someone that they are taking 25 right now, and they would look at me with shock and confusion, and then we'd move on to the next game. So
The shock for another 11. I think it's actually only 9, right? Shock doesn't
yeah,
do
only
11.
9.
Yeah,
Garbage in this deck.
Trash
Totally.
spell,
1 mana
really.
deal 9 to someone's face. 1 mana, basically Soren's Vengeance. Great.
Really quick. I'm seeing the victory chimes in the deck.
Yeah, the Victory Chimes is not my favorite card, but Bender's Waterskin replacing that has put me up on the idea of that a little bit more. So I
Okay,
suppose
that's exactly
I
where I
need
was
to-
going because like Bender's Waterskin is so good. That's such a crazy card. And
Which
and
is
I was
funny
just
because
wondering.
Victory Chimes is not as good in this deck, because something I realized quickly through playing this is that, look at the 1 mana suite.
Yeah, you
That's
need
all pips, baby. It's
you need
all
colors.
red mana.
You need colors here
red.
for sure. For sure.
I mean, and then you have to have sometimes flexible colors, because Soren's Vengeance is 3 black pips.
I was actually wondering about that too, right? Like the Soren's Vengeance, but then of course also like the Necrodominance, Necropotence in Phyrexian Arena. There's like a pretty significant split here of like you need a lot of red pips for all of your burn spells, but then all of your like Card Draw and Tutoring requires a lot of black pips. Is that ever a problem, or does it like kind of work?
Yes, it is. And I keep coming back to the situation with this deck of there's no card draw in the command zone, even though my commanders collectively cost 13 mana. And that, that sucks. And sometimes I can feel that. But the bigger issue with this deck, the clunk factor, comes in with the mana rather than the card draw. to the point where there's stuff in the lands that could very easily be subbed out. Nykthos taps for colorless on its own, right? And that's a liability in your opening hand. Cabal Coffers not offering you a very high floor but having a very high ceiling is nice, and it's really, really nice when you end up needing a bunch of mana on your win turns and you end up having the Cabal Coffers or Urborg combo. But man, like when you don't, ugh.
Yeah.
So yes, it becomes an issue. But like we were talking about before, part of the appeal of this deck to me is if the rest of my decks are seeing your professor in class, this is seeing your professor on a bender on the weekend at a bar. This is me taking the tie off and going, you know what? Let's accept some clunk. Let's accept some weirdness and some downsides.
We're just gonna hit it.
Fun.
We're just gonna hit it.
We're just gonna hit it.
Doesn't matter.
And to answer your question from earlier, this is probably closer to a bracket 2 deck than a bracket 3 deck. The win rate is a little bit artificially bolstered by the fact that people didn't really know how to play around it, and more recently I haven't been having as much luck with the win rate.
Yeah.
But I'm still having just as much fun, if not more fun, now that people know how to play around it. You could probably take out the game changers of this and maybe make a couple adjustments, and have this be bracket 2. I'm not super well versed in exactly what people feel about where bracket 2's power level should be. I don't have a ton of experience playing in that bracket. This was, again, supposed to be my dedicated bracket 2 deck, but then we play bracket 3, so I added some game changers and moved a couple of things around to make it, more viable in that environment. But I would not consider this a hard bracket 3 deck. I think that it falls short of some of the requirements that you would really like to have going into a more competitive space.
So for what it's worth, like bracket 2 is kind of like the biggest part of my local environment. That's what we mostly play. And looking at this deck, I think there's a couple of things that are like, for example, Cabal Coffers, Nykthos, Soul Ring, these like really, really explosive mana pieces, I feel like tend to be a little much for bracket 2. They're just kind of like you're kind of getting so much done out of nowhere that can be problematic. But other than that, yeah, take out the game changers and this is probably totally fine, because it is telegraphed. That's the big thing, right? That's always what you're looking for in bracket 2. And yeah, I know. We said earlier this wins out of hand, but look, if this comes down and both commanders are in play and you've got 7 cards in hand, I have to assume that I'm going to die unless I do something. Like, you got to pay a little bit of attention. Yeah. I think that's fine.
Yeah, there's winning out of hand after you play a Stormkiln Artist, a Archmage Emeritus, so that you're making a card and treasure off of every instant and sorcery you cast, and then playing 50 instants and sorceries. And then there's winning out of hand after I've taken a down payment on a mortgage to establish 2 commanders together. Not everyone's going to know what they're looking for the first time playing against it, but they will know what the pieces look like coming into play the second or third time.
I mean, it's also just like a matter of, a lot of the time, I'm guessing you're just kind of forced to throw these down and really hope they survive a turn rotation, right?
Yeah, sometimes it ends up being that way. Granted, when I'm holding a Deflecting Swat and a Redirect Lightning or whatever in my hand, I feel better about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. This deck wins more often banking on the idea of, hey, I am here just chilling with my Torwalkie. I know I've got Obosh in hand, but player 3's got like a Jetmir and 8 dudes on board. You can hit me, the Torbosh. I end up doing that so often. I call this deck Torbosh and Owalkie every 2 seconds.
That's great. I love that.
It kills me.
That's a great name for it.
Torbosh and Owalkie. Maybe that should. I haven't been in the realm of naming decks. Maybe that should be what we go with for this, Torbosh and Owalkie. But yeah, you can hit me quite hard, or you can remove my stuff, or you can deal with the thing that is imminently killing you. So this wins more often, kind of Mario Kart style, being behind someone until you get the little boost of speed from being in their wind tunnel.
That's not even just like a little bit of strategy, right? Like that is a very legitimate and sincere way to approach playing Commander, and more often than not gives you the highest win chances. Something I do here locally is I host these budget tournaments for Commander where you play with 50-euro decks. It's basically CDH, but our decks are terrible. And I won the most recent one by playing a deck that was kind of like sort of with the like just keeping stuff in hand, where I basically just established these 2-card combos that could win out of hand. And then I mostly just sat there and waited until people ran out of gas because they were fighting each other and trying to win and whatnot. And I was just like, okay, everybody done? Cool. Here's a copycat combo and the game is over. That is a very legitimate, sincere approach that I think is it's easy to say, but I will just kill your commander. But will you? Will you really? When, as you said, over there, this guy is going to kill you this turn. Like, yeah, I will kill you next turn, but this guy is killing you right now. So who is the real problem here?
And also, sometimes there's an element of sandbagging. Sure, you can kill my Obosh if he's out, but sometimes Torwaki is chilling on the board, the commander that is doing less of the pulling of the cart of the strategy than the two, and Obosh is chilling in my hand. I will sit on this Obosh sometimes until the win turn, or sometimes just until the mid game where I feel like it's appropriate to establish him after some counterspells and removal have come down. I don't have to dedicate to it.
It is a split mana cost, right? Like we keep talking about 13 mana here, but it is really 5+5+3, and that does matter.
And it does. And I don't know how much it matters. Someone, Stale could run a matricy on it or something to find out exactly how much it effectively plays mana cost-wise, quote-unquote, for both my commanders. But I don't have that information. But yeah, paying it in installments, God, back to the mortgage metaphor, means that you can get really tricky with it. Sometimes an early Obosh is good if I don't get exiled and I have a reanimate in hand. Sometimes putting Obosh onto the board and be like, ooh, scary, kill me, kill me, kill me. Someone shoots the Obosh, and then, great, I have a 1-mana Obosh later on, is the move. This deck takes a lot of energy mentally for me to play in a way where I am going for the highest chance of winning. Sometimes I get kind of exhausted playing it and stressing out about, oh god, I hope they don't or do a certain thing coming to the end. And then next game I have to pick out a deck that's a little bit more turn my brain off.
So I've got a couple of cards that I'm interested in.
Yeah, let's get back to the cards.
You told me about Reanimate. That's very interesting. You told me about the Phyrexian Reclamation. Now, I'm curious about Praetor's Grasp. What you doing with that?
Praetor's Grasp. So remember how we talked about the fact that this deck sometimes has issues with resources, mana generation, and card draw, namely. Yeah. I have a deck building restriction. My opponents don't, and we play a lot of the One Ring because we do a lot of proxying. So, hey, older cousin, I don't have a One Ring in my deck, but you do, so bring it over here, which is an indestructible card draw engine. So, yeah, it ends up costing 7 total after I Praetor's Grasp him, but sometimes I just need what someone else has more badly than I need what I have.
A One Ring is still pretty good at 7 mana. That's also worth saying. Yeah. That's still a pretty good card.
That card could have been 7 mana, and I might still play it.
So you just touched on this. So you proxy a lot. Like something I found interesting here is that you got a Badlands in the deck. I mean, it's obviously a very expensive card.
If you look at my lands for any of my decks, you're going to be like, why is this deck $1,500? And you're going to go, oh, yep, it's the lands. My group proxies a lot because a lot of us are either college students or we are, the economy right now is... Don't mean to bum out the people listening, but
I think they're really
right now is in
bummed out.
such a way where we're like, well, if we want to get a house one day, I probably shouldn't be buying these commander decks wholesale. And it's easy to listen to advice online about how you should make and think about commander decks and Magic, and it's harder to follow it. And I try to follow what I hear, practice what I preach when I think that it's good advice. So, I hear Trinket Mage talking about how, look, man, you should probably proxy your land base because the consistency it adds is important, but bad lands ain't the soul ring. Bad lands isn't the thing where I see it in my opening hand, I'm going, yes, this is going to be a crazy game. It helps me get my Necropotence out and then pivot into something that requires a lot of red pips later on, sure, but it is not explosive. Consistency is good, but it is not making me faster. It's still powerful, but in a different way. And I think, especially when you have a play group of people who are lower income because they are mostly students, it's important to allow them to still have access to that and not be in a position where they have to spend money in order to access the things that their friends are accessing.
Yeah.
Especially because if you take that to its extreme and you make everyone purchase every card they have, which is, I think, much easier said than done, then the guy who's a lawyer in your play group just has the best decks, or at least has the most consistent decks, because he doesn't mind dropping money on the Bajuka Bog. Or
I got a
Bajuka
lawyer in
Bog,
my
the
play group.
Badlands.
His decks are not the best decks.
Well, he could purchase some of the better cards, right? He could actually afford the One Ring in a world where none of us could.
No, he could purchase the best decks, but that doesn't fix the deck building.
Yeah, I suppose money doesn't buy wins. But, money plus, if everyone was of equal skill and of equal deck building, they would ideally have the best decks.
Fully on board on your side there. Like I'm 100% like all in on proxies, like super proxy friendly, all of that stuff. Like over here, it even goes so far. Like our LGS is not like Visit's partner. It's not in the VPN network. Well, I think the N in the VPN is the network, so it's the network. Whatever. It's not a VPN store. And a big reason why is because like we aren't sure if we want to push for it, because then we can't allow proxies anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that's tricky because we are a student town, right? There's pretty much the entire city here is just one big university. And once we start not letting students come because they are playing proxies, we might have way less players. Like, that's going to be a problem. So
yeah, that's an interesting tug of war that you guys have to decide on. Is it better to have the population or the partnership?
It's just kind of the thing where like ultimately, Magic is supposed to be like, to me, is really like a social game, and I want to hang out with you, and I don't really give a shit about anything else, right? And if you want to own the cards, so for me personally, in my like decks that I own and play regularly, I don't use any proxies. But that's not because I have some sort of like moral like opposition to it. I just like owning the cards. That's it.
Yeah.
That's the entire thing. And because of that, I also oftentimes have my decks a bit limited. Like, for example, I won't have a Badlands in in a lot of my decks, or the mana base is a little bit more budget. I will play Snarls, and I'm just fine with that. That doesn't really bother me. But I totally get it. Like, I have a friend of mine who plays 100% proxied, who doesn't even really own any proper Magic cards, and he's perfectly content with that. Although sometimes I wish he took a little bit more care to at least make sure the sleeves are the same. That would be good. He's just
Wait, he plays different colored sleeves? Are you joking me? Judge, marked cards. This man.
You're not gonna believe this. One time he showed up. So you know how there's these services where you can like print proxies? So you have like,
yes,
Magic style cards, but they're still proxies. And he had those done.
One of those.
But he had them made with like different card backs from different orders.
Oh.
And he didn't want to sleeve his deck. So he came with an unsleeved deck one time where there was a mixture of real Magic cards and then like 4 or 5 different proxy backs.
Some people allow certain things of like, there's that one episode of Shuffle Up and Play where Ken's playing with clear sleeves and then he has double-faced cards because he forgot to put those in the deck.
Great.
Some people allow a little bit that's obviously an extreme example. That's not okay. But some people allow a little bit of like, is it that big of a deal if it's like semi-marked? Like, do I really have to make this guy purchase another thing of 100 sleeves because one of them got crinkled in the corner or whatever? No, probably not. We're friends. But like, yeah, that's something that I would, raise an eyebrow at and be like, I don't think I'm cool with that. My cousin who plays a lot of Izzet, at one point really wanted to do a deck that was 50-50 sleeves red and blue. And I was helping him sleeve it, I believe, as we realized, wait a second, I could just memorize which cards are red and which cards are blue and then kind of have an idea of what's on top of my deck at all times.
We did the Pride event recently, like where you can play any commander with any other commander as a partner.
Mm-hmm.
And a friend of mine, he didn't build a Pride deck, but what he did instead is he just took 2 of his regular decks. One of them was the blue Kami and the other one was the black Kami. And he just shuffled them together. He just had
Oh.
one giant pile of 200 cards. And as you might imagine, the black kami was black sleeves and the blue kami was blue sleeves.
So
But
he did have kind of a little bit of future sight in what he was
he
drawing.
knew which side of the deck was pulling from. But in this particular case, because the deck wasn't built at all, right? Like it was not, this was a
Yeah,
disaster
it was so
of a
jank that
strategy.
it's like, you take it.
But it was a disaster of a strategy. The deck did not work at all. And he would look at the top of his deck and be like, oh, it's a blue card. Oh, I really need a swamp.
Yeah, at a certain level, it's like, yeah, we're playing stuff that has a little bit more intention built into it, and you're goofing right now, and I don't want to make you buy another 100 sleeves and re-sleeve an entire deck to goof. It's whatever.
Hey, sorry. I'm just telling stories now. I'm just having a good time. Tell me a little bit about Brash Taunter. You mentioned it earlier.
Oh, you beat me to it. All right, there's a couple more small things I want to talk about, and one of them, my favorite card in this deck might be Brash Taunter. Brash Taunter and his close cousin Screaming Nemesis are in this deck for a specific reason, and that is counting in multipliers. Brash Taunter, if you don't know, Brash Taunter's a 5-mana goblin with Indestructible. He's a 1/1. He's got 2 lines of text. When he's dealt damage, he deals that much damage to target opponent, and then you can pay 3 mana and tap him to have him fight another target creature. Okay, so Brash Taunter has a weird thing he does in this deck where he damage multiplies. I have Obosh, I have Torwaki, and I have Brash Taunter. I cast, let's say, Lightning Bolt, again, to make matters a little bit more even. Before, it dealt 11 for 1 mana, so let's use that as the comparison point. I cast Lightning Bolt, targeting not my opponent, but instead my own Brash Taunter. Torwaki trigger goes on the stack, and I point that damage at my own Brash Taunter. Okay, a couple of different weird things are happening here. First of all, Brash Taunter is something I own, which means I get to be the one that chooses what order I stack the effects in, which means they are going to count damage plus first, damage multiply second. So the actual Lightning Bolt is going to be 3 + 1 to 4, then multiplied to 8. And then the Torwaki doesn't get the damage addition, so it's just still 4.
Yeah.
So I have 12 damage in 2 different instances coming at my own Brash Taunter. Those both hit. Technically they hit in order, and then more triggers go on the stack between them. I'm going to pretend it's one instance for the time being, just to simplify the math. So 12 damage is hitting him. I am gaining 4 off of my own Torwaki's lifelink. And then Brash Taunter triggers. So we are going to have 2 instances of damage going at someone else. Here's the thing, though. Brash Taunter is a source I control dealing non-combat damage with an odd converted mana cost to something else. That means that it is going to get multiplied again. So I have an 8 and a 4 mana damage instance, an 8 and a 4 damage instance coming at Brash Taunter. He gets hit, then he is going to send these at one of my opponents. It is then going to be, instead of 8, it's going to be doubled to 16 plus 1, so 17, and then 4, which is then going to be doubled to 8 plus 1, 9. So this 11 damage Lightning Bolt is instead going to be a 26 damage Lightning Bolt now, if I did the math correctly.
Yeah, no, that checks out. Just a 1 mana, 26 damage Lightning Bolt.
Yep, a 30 life point swing because of the fact that I'm gaining 4 off of the original Torwaki's lifelink. That is why Brash Taunter is in this deck. He is a lightning rod, and it's also why it's really important that my spells can target both players and creatures usually. Some exceptions to that, but I would like them to target both because I can then pivot into hitting my own Brash Taunter so that I can hit someone in the face with the damage, or just hit them in the face with it if I don't have the Brash Taunter. Screaming Nemesis is in here for a very similar reason. I can't shoot the Screaming Nemesis with my own Torwaki's trigger because of the fact that the Torwaki trigger will kill Screaming Nemesis. I believe it has 3 toughness.
Yeah.
So the 4 damage is no good for that. But that doesn't matter. I can still just shoot him with the Lightning Bolt and then still get the damage multiplier. Screaming Nemesis does not have Indestructible, so he won't survive this in the same way Brash Taunter will, but Screaming Nemesis has a rider effect where the damage it will deal to an opponent is going to make it so that they can no longer gain life for the rest of the game. and that matters nothing for a lot of people and is everything against a life gain strategy or someone who has incidental what is the new exquisite blood on a creature, Bloodthirsty Conqueror?
Yeah.
If they've got a Bloodthirsty Conqueror out, like I need that. Otherwise I can't win against this person. So Screaming Nemesis and Brash Taunter fulfill a similar role in this deck. Screaming is a little bit better for very specific edge cases. Brash Taunter is better for actually closing out the game. And then also, that fight clause on Brash Taunter is super important. If someone's got like a 8/8 out, and Brash Taunter fights that thing, Brash Taunter is then going to hit them in the face for 17, 8 doubled to 16, non-combat damage, so an additional 1.
That's devastating. I'm honestly in awe that the lightning bolt does 26 damage.
1 mana, pretty good, huh?
That's pretty good. That surely is good. Crazy stuff.
Yeah, so jank aside, the deck really wants to be able to turn these small mana cost and damage spells into things that can threaten lethal out of nowhere, and that's why Brash Taunter is in here, because it's multiplicative counting.
All right, then. Before we finish this out, is there any more cards? Are there any specific things, any synergies that you really feel like, oh wait, we didn't talk about this. This is something I still want to bring up.
Chain Lightning is funny. Cast it on your own Brash Taunter over and over and over again because you are the player or the permanent's controller.
That's
and
filthy.
You could just get a bajillion value out of it for 1 card. And then Requiem Monolith. Requiem Monolith lets you basically mark one of your creatures as whenever this thing takes damage this turn, draw that many cards and lose that much life. It's great with both Torwaki and Obosh. Torwaki has 3 toughness, so anytime you trigger his ping, his ping effect, it is going to be able to shoot himself because it says any target, not any other target. So you just deny the part of Requiem Monolith where it lets you immediately deal 1 damage to the creature you're targeting. And instead now, once per turn, Torwaki can just shoot himself and draw you 2 cards off of the first instant or sorcery you cast, or more if you feel like nuking him into the ground. And when Obosh is around, Obosh has 5 toughness, so the Torwaki trigger that's doubled to 4 can shoot Obosh, and your first instant or sorcery on your turn can draw you 4 cards.
That's a very satisfying distribution there, I have to say.
It works out so perfectly.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are the 2 big ones. I love this deck to death, and again, it feels like getting to roll up my sleeves and take off the tie and get into the fray after a long day of playing responsible decks. And that's what it's supposed to be about. I am constantly trying to iterate on it and streamline it a little bit more so it can get closer to a bracket 3 deck. But I don't know, maybe I'll divvy this up and make a bracket 3 and bracket 2 version of it, because I think being between brackets does it a little bit of a disservice. But it's undoubtedly one of my favorite decks, if not my favorite deck of all time.
I am a little surprised to not see a Mana Geysir in here. That's a card that I feel like ought to be at home in something like this.
It's constantly in contention. It's not in the maybe list currently, I don't think, but it is. It calls to me like the Green Goblin mask of, so how often do you need a bunch of mana? This is a card that makes you a bunch of mana, and it's within your restrictions, and it triggers Torwaki. You should probably be playing it. So yeah, it's probably going to end up in here at some point.
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming on. It's been a delight to have you.
It's been a total blast being here. Thank you for having me on. I think we learned a little bit more about Magic today.
I hope you guys enjoyed that video. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. You can check out Blood Artist's channel in the collaboration thing in the, below on the channel name. You click on the channel name, it should say Baumi and Blood Artist. Although it takes a moment. It's weird. On YouTube, you can't actually do the collaboration while the video is still private. I don't know why. It doesn't make any sense. You need to put it live and then you need to send the link out and wait for people to respond. So there's always a bit of a delay. Anyhow, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to give the video a thumbs up. Don't forget to check out my Patreon link down in the description. I would really appreciate your support, and I'll see you guys soon. Goodbye.